When you think of some of the best-selling games and franchises of all time, you think Mario, Call of Duty, Pokemon, and GTA, to name a few. But there's one franchise that has now in recent years cemented itself to be one of gaming's heavy hitters, Monster Hunter. Between you and me, my first experience with the Monster Hunter games was when I tried to play the demo on the 3DS and I did not like the combat, so basically, I was just a dumb kid who had no clue how to play it. But when Monster Hunter World came out, I brushed it aside and was not really interested in trying out the latest game, or the franchise for that matter, because of my past experience. I would say that there were Monster Hunter demos on the Switch, but it wasn't until late last year when an unknown force made me try the 2021 Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Rise. This might be a minor spoiler as to what I think about the game, or if you read the title, but in my video listing my favorite games of 2021, Monster Hunter Rise came in 6th place, and I hadn't even played it for that much either. So now, after having sunken more hours into the game, and since the hype for the next expansion, Sunbreak, is coming soon, I'm here to tell you what I think about this game so that it can help you make a choice on whether you want to dive into the Monster Hunter Rise, or the series for that matter. So buckle up, get on your palico, feed your Kahoot, and let the hunt begin. Monster Hunter Prime. Sorry, I just found name jokes that I did in the Super Mario Odyssey video funny, but I'll stop with those. Monster Hunter Rise has a very simple introduction. You're a citizen of Kamura village, having a good nap when your Palamute wakes you up, and then you encounter the two twins from It. No, sorry, The Shining. Sorry, but no, never mind. Who tell you to get ready. Why? Well, because you have just become of age to become a hunter. A bit cliche if you ask me, but this cutscene is so well made and looks amazing, showing the bustling village, the different stuff you can do there, and it really brings Kamura to life. You then speak to Elder Fugan for a bit, and then you meet the ninja dude, Utsushi I think his name is, who then sends you off into a hunt, and then we're introduced to the amazing pre-hunt cutscene of Monster Hunter Rise, with its poetic lyrics. And so the hunt begins with a good first monster and a good tutorial that explains hunting, gathering, and interacting with the environment. As an introduction, it's great, visually stunning, great traditional music, and a good first hunting session. But now, let's get into the core gameplay of Monster Hunter Rise. If you could have guessed it, in Monster Hunter Rise, you hunt. That is the core gameplay loop of Monster Hunter, and it really is a blast. This loop that they've set up of starting in the village, preparing your gear, getting a meal boost, and then heading off into the hunt, where you then explore the area, survey, gather materials, and hunt monsters. All of it comes together to create a gameplay loop that is so addicting to play. To understand why this loop is as good as it is, we need to look at what makes this loop, which are two key areas, the first being the hunting section, and the second one, I'll just call it the village section. Beginning with the hunting, this is a place where you'll be spending most of your time in Monster Hunter Rise. There are 5 areas in Monster Hunter Rise, all with different biomes. If you were expecting a fully open world game, this is not what Monster Hunter Rise is, but rather a segmented open world, where you load into different areas, but that doesn't mean the game isn't open world in a sense. These 5 maps are very big for what they are, even if you can traverse from one end to the other in quick succession, but these areas have verticality. There are mountains that loom above the ground, caves that go underground, and big open areas, and wherever you go there are smaller monsters for you to hunt or useful gear to gather. Traversing these areas is so much fun for 2 reasons, and I'm not sure which is more groundbreaking. First, we have the Palamute, which is your dog. Palamutes are much faster than you, and don't use up your limited stamina. They can jump, attack, sprint, and above all, the dog can drift. I didn't know I need to see a dog drift, but yes, drifting dog. Second, we have the wire bug, which is, in short, a grappling hook of sorts. This thing is amazing. You could be riding your dog 1 second, jump out of it, and zip yourself forward, upwards, to the side, or even straight down. And this gives you so much verticality and movement options, and in tense situation, it instantly gives you the high ground, which is especially useful against the big monsters. Along with movement capabilities, in combat the wire bug gives your weapon special moves that swing you at sonic speed with a slash or into the air to do a ground slam, which are just some examples of what you can do depending on your weapon. These moves are highly effective and look so good when you pull them off. To balance the wire bug, you are given only 2 charges or uses of it, which slowly replenishes after each use, and I think this is very well balanced. Speaking of combat, let's dive into the very core of Monster Hunter Rise. Combat, which I've been hinting at, is the core of Monster Hunter, like I just said, and everything else in this game revolves around it. The best way I could describe this is, well, I'm not really sure, but it's good. Very, very good. There are many weapons for you to choose to play around with, like a long sword, short sword with a shield, axes, and even a gun blade. I ended up focusing on the switch axe as I progressed in the game, but each weapon type also has their own special move from the wire bug, like I hinted at earlier, which changes up the combat from each weapon, along with the weapons being inherently different in what they do. Due to the weapons being different, tackling each monsters require a different strategy and approach. From this, you can pull off sick moves and get a combination of attacks. It feels very satisfying, taking on massive monsters with only a weapon and your companions, and if you pull the wrong move, you get punished for it. Not Dark Souls level of punished, but punished, like bad. Your companions, the canine palamute and the feline, that's the actual name of the cat, it's called feline with a Y, but yeah, they are amazing at supporting you. They don't do as much damage as you, but their support is felt. If you're stunned, they will get you back up, heal you, support attacks, grant you temporary buffs, and help you in resource gathering. One more positive about the general combat are the number of monsters for you to take on. There are many of them, and they all act very differently from one another, that no two encounters are gonna be the same. Now for the bad, but there isn't much. First, the companions. Yes, I just gave him so much praise, but there are some flaws. Combat on the palamute does not feel good. It's slow and very ineffective. I get why they do this, as to encourage you to fight on foot and only use the palamute to traverse. Also, although you can feint in a battle, your companions kind of just mop around and don't do much and wait a certain amount of time. Bear in mind, this is what I've read. I have never seen the companions fate, which could hint at the difficulty of the game. Also, back to the combat, this could just be me being bad at these types of games, but the lock-on feature and the camera in multiple occasions felt very sluggish, which led to some very awkward moments. However, combat does feel really good and addictive, and the positives outweigh the negatives by a landslide. To cap off the gameplay section, we've got the outside of Hunt gameplay, the village area, or the village section. Generally, Monster Hunter Rise is a fast-paced game, and the missions reflect that. Missions can be short, but can become long, but not too long, which perfectly fits the handheld nature of the game. So if the missions are short and straight to the point, you can imagine how focused and concentrated the village area is. You can fast travel around the village at blistering pace, and the stuff you do there takes no time at all. Want to buy some resources? There's a shop right in the center of the village, and browsing, selling, and buying goes by really quickly. Need to upgrade your weapons? Easy, just talk to the blacksmith, and the weapon chart there is very easy to follow to see what you can upgrade, forge, and the materials you need. There's also a canteen where you should go before each hunt, where you eat 3 pieces of candy stacked on a barbecue stick, which is called Dango, and grants you 3 buffs, more or less, before each hunt. The cutscene is fun to watch, but can be skipped too, which just adds to the pacing of the game. Lastly, we have the Buddy Plaza, dedicated to your companions, a hub where you can send your buddy offs in a hand gliders to go exploring, send them in submarines to find specific ingredients, and hire new companions for your endeavors. If you were to attempt to do all these things between each hunt, it would take you less than 5 minutes, which helps keep the gameplay focused and getting right back into the action. All in all, this was a lengthy section, but this is where the heart of Monster Hunter Rise lies, in its gameplay, and with an amazing gameplay loop, being very focused too, makes this a very, I cannot stress this enough, very enjoyable gameplay experience. Atmosphere is something that is vital to how we perceive a game. How it looks, how it sounds, both these two senses come together and make us think how it feels. Obviously we can't taste or smell the game, but if you do, I don't know what to say other than that's pretty weird, dude, but we can start off with how Monster Hunter Rise looks, because let me tell you, this game really is a looker. Whenever there is talks about new Switch games or ports, people are always quick to say that the Switch's graphics are subpar and look bad. Whilst this is objectively true, that the Switch's hardware capabilities hinder it from getting similar graphics like the current gen consoles or high-end PCs can, with hard work, games can be developed to look stunning on the system. There are many examples of good-looking Switch titles, and Monster Hunter Rise is one of them. Capcom managed to modify their Reach for the Moon engine, otherwise known as the RE engine, and make a version that works for the Switch. They also used this to make Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which I find bizarre but also fascinating at the same time for the same console, and other consoles too. But Capcom are great at making visually pleasing games, and it is no different here. The game looks sharp, rarely stutters with frame drops, meaning that you are always focused on the gameplay. Colors pop, and the animations in cutscenes or in the field are wonderful. This is a very good technical achievement that they've done, and I applaud it. What helps the game look this pleasing is its art style. How does its art direction manage to immerse us in its world? I can't speak for previous Monster Hunter games and how they are presented because, well, I haven't really played any, but here, Monster Hunter Rise, like I mentioned earlier, is set in Kamura Village, a small village set in feudal Japan. Its architecture is traditional, with grand halls being contrasted with the smaller buildings, and shrines in the wild areas. The villagers are dressed in their robes and other special armaments, with art and banners also being reminiscent of this time period. What further brings the atmosphere further are what the villagers do. They are cooking food for their warriors, selling traded goods, forging weapons, and taking care of the wildlife. Every villager has their own specific job that helps them contribute to the village. A well-functioning traditional society. However, there are some areas where the immersion just falls flat and breaks. For instance, there are some villagers that are carrying goods around, which is fine in itself because that shows them working, but they just walk into an area and just disappear. And then you turn around and see the same villager taking the exact same path that he just took. Visually, this is the only thing that could break immersion for me, but it's so small in the grand scheme of things that it doesn't really matter that you have to actually go out of your way to look for this. In the hunting grounds, there's nothing here that is immersion breaking at all in the slightest. The vast wildlife where nature has taken full control with hints at an ancient civilization, it's just cool. The different wildlife in the different zones are all expressive in what they do, and because they are so distinct from each other, you really feel the ancient nature of the world, and how you are constantly diving into issues that a modern society would only learn about from history books. Along with the new features, the Rampage, a tower defense of sorts where you must protect the village from monsters, which is constantly talked about, you never really know when the next one could come, and when it does, the onslaught of monsters shows the strength of a village when they stand together. Visually, there is not much else I can say about the hunting grounds, but there's one cool feature that I really do like, and that is the pre-hunt cutscene. Before each hunt, a cutscene is played where a narrator reads a poem which explains the powers and capabilities of the monster, whilst also showing a highlight reel of the monster in action. This helps the player a lot, not just in immersing you into its world, but also by aiding you in figuring out what could be the best way to deal with this monster. It does help a lot that the narrator here is an absolute legend at reciting these poems of old. Moving on to the voice acting, this is where I had the biggest issue in the game. Apart from the legendary poem reader, the voice acting of the characters here generally sound dull. It's good, but because of a lack of story, which I'll get into later, the voice acting here is just good. Nothing outstanding. The main character is also given a voice in combat areas, and for me personally, I would prefer the main character to be silent in a way Link is, making a few battle cries and such, but no spoken words. As what we have now feels a bit strange, and whenever you go fast on your Palamute, they suddenly say, "Run like the wind." But apart from the voice acting, the other audible stuff we can hear is great. Whenever I end up talking about sound design, I just end up saying it's pretty good. The sound when you finish sharpening a sword is satisfying, and when your weapon durability falls, the sound makes you feel vulnerable. Again, the unique monsters all sound terrifying and daunting. Music here is also very good. There is tense music when in battle, peaceful music in the village, and very pleasing, successful hunt song that gets you hyped for the next hunt. Overall, the atmosphere is good. Apart from a few hiccups that break immersion, atmosphere is a good success that complements the flow of the gameplay really well. For the story, I will do my best to summarize this as fast as possible because there isn't much to talk about. The story here is very, very simple, and that's a good thing. The fact that the basic story is reminded subtly throughout the game, with the Rampage, you are constantly working towards something, although subconsciously. The story takes its time with you and progresses as you progress with the game, which is nice. However, the big gripes I have, which I alluded to earlier, are with the characters. Even if the game is mainly gameplay focused, there should be no excuse for having characters as bland, as generic as the ones here. From the top of my head, I can only name 3 characters: Elder Fugan, Hinata, and Minoto, and of course my 2 buddies that I named myself, Jaguar and Max. But for the main cast, they don't do much. They show up at random intervals in the story, and at one point they started fighting and I was taken aback because they haven't even shown a remote interest in combat. I won't go on much longer about the story, but my final gripe was the final boss of the first credit roll. Not the fight, but rather how it ended. Spoiler warning, I guess, but it's not really major. The fight was the most intense one against the titular Magna Malo, and once I managed to best it, the completion theme played, I was loaded into the cutscene, congratulating me for winning, and then talked about more hunts, and then credits. Of all the games I played, this was one of the most anticlimactic endings ever, on par with the fake ending of Sonic and the Black Knight. To conclude the story, the fact is that it is very insignificant, helps the game a bit, as even if there is a story, the gameplay makes up for it, but when the story sections come in, it just turns into a snooze fest, sadly.
This thing's been passed down in Kamura for generations.
Luckily, the story is the worst part of the game, and the other sections more than make up for it, and the extra side content you can do in this game is a blast. For one, obviously you will be hunting a lot. There are lots of hunts that are optional for you to do, and a lot of hunts that can be done online with multiplayer. Sadly, I haven't tried the online because paying for online is something I can't really do right now, but trust me when I say that it will be a blast. Of course, you can do multiplayer hunts solo, although they might be a bit more tedious since you are alone, but it's still fun nonetheless. Like, really, the gameplay is just so good and so much fun. But, however, not only are there multiplayer missions, but there are also event missions, which is basically free DLC. Capcom has done numerous events that are just more missions, but also those that collaborations with other games like Okami, Street Fighter, and the Blue Blur himself. Completing the mission nets you cool cosmetics. As you can see, I've decided my Palamute to look like Amaterasu, and my feline, the cat, you know, the feline, is zooming by as Sonic. Oh yeah, hunting more monsters gives you the ability to craft more armor that you can deck yourself out, so customization in the game is not limited in the slightest. And you can also show off your style in the photo mode, which is fun too. Again, I need to mention a problem that some new players might encounter with this game, and that is the controls once again. It did take me a while to get used to how the combat functions, but once I got used to it, it becomes a blast. I strongly recommend new players to stick with the combat because there is a heap, it is a heap on a good game, and that you'll be getting yourself immersed to once you overcome that one minor obstacle, which is the controls, in my opinion.
Nice!
With Sunbreak coming out later this month, I cannot recommend this game enough. Monster Hunter Rise is really an amazing game. The fact that the combat is so much fun to play, to take down towering monsters, explore densely concentrated environments, and all this whilst running extremely well on the Switch is amazing. This game is perfect for players that just want to have some fun for a couple of minutes if time is scarce, or hours when you have the time to do so. The fact that the story here is subpar does take away from how good the game is, but overall, Monster Hunter Rise is super fun, and like I mentioned, the new expansion Sunbreak is coming out soon, and I highly recommend anyone, even those that have only the slightest interest in trying out Monster Hunter Rise, because this game really is a treat. And with that, we are at the end of the video. That was longer than I expected, but I hope that you enjoyed this video, and any support or critiques are appreciated. Yeah. I can't wait for Sunbreak. I won't be picking up on release, but I will pick it up when I get the funds to do so, or maybe when it goes on sale. On another note, I will be releasing my video on Sonic Mania not next week, 2 weeks from now, which I can't wait to share. It's really long from what I've written so far. And speaking of Sonic, Summer Games Fest is this Friday, and I really hope that Sonic Frontiers gameplay is shown, but other than that, I hope that I didn't take away too much time from your day. Have a good one, and see you next time. With that, Storm, out.